نحمده ونصلي على رسول النبي الكريم. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين آمين. قال الله تعالى في شأن حبيبي إن الله وملائكته يصلون على النبي يا أيها الذين آمنوا صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما. اللهم صل على سيدنا مولانا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه على سيدنا مولانا محمد وبارك وسلم عليه الصلاة والسلام عليك يا سيدي يا رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم. Today is the 7th of Rajab, and I'll talk more about Rajab after Salat, inshallah. Shaban, yes, yeah, 7th of Shaban. Jazakallah khair. So today is the 7th of Shaban, and I'll talk more about that after Salat, inshallah. But as I mentioned last week, you have these 3 months together. You have Rajab, Shaban, and then, of course, Ramadan. And Rajab is known as the month of Allah. Shaban is known as the month of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and Ramadan is the month of the Ummah of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. There's an interesting point to note here, though, which many of us can't understand or don't know because, even the basics of things have been hidden. So in Rajab, the 13th of Rajab, you have the birth of Sayyidina Ali, Karamallahu wajh. The 3rd of Sha'ban, you have the birth of Imam Hussein alayhi salam. And the 15th of Ramadan is the birth of Imam Hassan alayhi salam. So Ramadan is the month of the Ummah of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So that is the same month in which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sent down, one of the leaders of the youth of Jannah, who sacrificed his own position simply for the good of the Ummah of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He sacrificed his own position, his own comfort, just to stop the bloodshed amongst the Ummah of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So that is Ramadan. Sha'ban, you have the month of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, in which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sends Imam Hussein alayhi salam, who sacrificed his own family, who sacrificed himself, simply for the protection of the way of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And then Rajab, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala refers to it as his month. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sends his lion in that month, who is born in his house, in the house of Allah, in the Kaaba. And you see how this lion dealt with the enemies of Allah and his messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He is the conqueror of Khaybar, the one who basically was the essence of Badr, who did not leave the side of Rasulullah sallallahu in Uhud, and his defending Allah and his messenger just goes on and on and on. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sent him in the Rajab, in his month. Last week, I spoke about things that I've spoken about not too long ago. So it's kind of a reiteration of what I've spoken about a while back, but I wanted to reiterate these things as a foundation for what I'm going to talk about today. Because, there's so many things that have become convoluted or distorted, where the people have become confused, because you have these people that keep making these talking points about things that were not issues before. You know, and if you start looking at the background to what they're saying and why they're saying it, you realize that they have an issue with Rasulullah SAW himself. You know, as we know, Allah is Allah. There is no authority except for Allah. That is the reality. Yet He gives people authority. He gives things authority. So to deny that authority is also disbelief. You know, He's given water the authority to quench your thirst. He's also given water the authority to drown you. So water can save your life, and it can take your life. If you look at many things, they're like this. Fire is the same way. You know, He's given fire the authority to cook your food. And the fire, the same thing has the authority to burn you. You know, He's given human beings authority, even though, again, the reality is He is the only authority. You know, simple example, you know, He's given the people, you know, somebody can come up and slap me. And yet at the same time, He could take away the power of that person to slap me. So authority, again, is His. Life, He is the only one who is truly alive. You know, He has given life to some. He is the creator of life and death. In actuality, when He mentions this in Surah Mulk, He mentions death first and then life. Yet He is Hayy. But to deny that He has given life to other things is also denial of Him. Just like to deny that He has given authority, to deny that He has given whatever gifts He has given, to deny those gifts, again, is in reality denial of Him. So in Surah Fatiha, we say this multiple times a day. إِيَّاكَ نَعْبُدُ وَإِيَّاكَ نَسْتَعِينُ. We say to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that we worship You alone, and we ask help from You. Right? The first part, you know, is pretty simple, and most people don't, you know, mess with it. The second part is the thing that becomes the issue for many people. And then they start coming up with strange explanations for things, too. And I'll get to some of those. Worship is something very specific. Because when you worship someone, then you understand Him as complete authority. You know, for example, the knowledge of Allah is His knowledge. No one gave Him that knowledge. The knowledge that everybody else has is what has been given to them. What Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has allowed them to have. The authority of Allah is His authority. No one gave Him that authority. The authority that everybody else has is what is given to them. So when you worship someone, you understand him, or that one that you're worshiping, as complete authority. This is what it means to worship. You know, worship does not necessitate, or, you know, physical actions are not necessary as far as worship are concerned. It's simply the attitude towards Allah. The second part, when we say that we seek Your help. So this is where people confuse other people. So what they say is, they say, oh, you can only ask from Allah. You can't ask from anyone else. But then they get confused because they go around, they asking for people for help. And yet in the surah we just said that we seek your help. And then they come up with strange explanations. To give you one example, there's a guy that used to be in the subcontinent, Dr. Asrar Ahmad. So, of course, he's confused about this, and now he's got to come up with some explanation. Because his understanding is, oh, you can only ask from Allah. Which, the reality of that is true. But how do you ask from Allah? So he says, oh, if you ask somebody to do something for you and they don't do it, then, the first time's okay. And the second time's okay. But if you ask them 3 times and they still don't do it, then you've committed shirk. And this guy is supposed to be a well-respected guy. He even, has a tafsir. So this is the explanation he gives. And by that explanation, pretty much all of us are mushrik. And especially parents, you're definitely mushrik. And you tell your kids to do something, they don't do it. You tell them again, they don't do it. You tell them 10 times, they don't do it. So again, because they can't reconcile what the reality of it is, so they come up with strange explanations. In the Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He talks about seeking help. In Surah Kahf, which is a surah that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam recommended that we recite every Jummah, there is a story of Zulqarnain. And part of the story is that he comes to these people that where Ya'juj and Ma'juj are causing all this mischief in the earth. And so the people, they ask Zulqarnain for help. Zulqarnain says, fine, I will do this. But he also says to them, Ayyuni, I need your help. I need your assistance in this. So has he committed shirk? No. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is praising him. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us to seek help in doing good. So are we committing shirk? No. We are obeying the command of Allah. You walk outside, you need to go somewhere, you don't have a car, we say, oh brother, give me a ride. Have you committed shirk? No. This is the system Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has created. You go to your boss and you say, oh, I need a raise. Your boss is not your raziq. He's not your sustainer. He's not your provider. Yet you're going to the boss because, again, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has placed him in that authority, that position, where he can aid you. Even though the reality of everything is from Allah. So then a lot of these folks, when they get, these are the same people who, when, Iraq invaded Kuwait, so-called Iraq invaded Kuwait, and these are the same people who are running outside in the streets and saying, oh, Mr. Bush, please come and help us. Same people who call everybody else mushrik. That was not shirk for them. And then their same scholars are the ones who gave the fatwa that, oh, it's no problems with all these non-Muslims coming into Muslim lands and putting military bases in Muslim lands. They had no problem with that. That was not shirk. Yet, anybody else asks from one of the friends of Allah something, then it automatically becomes shirk. So now, when they can't reconcile all of this, then they say, oh, so you can ask from someone who's alive, but you can't ask from anybody who's dead. And of course, their definition of dead is also strange, because it's not the definition Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us in the Quran. Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the Quran, He tells us, about those who have been slain in His way. He says what? He says they are not dead. He says, Bal ahya, they are alive. In Surah Baqarah, He says, do not say that they are dead. In Surah Al Imran, He says, do not even think that they are dead. So from that standpoint, they're correct. Ask those who are alive. But who's alive? The one who Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says are alive. He says about the disbelievers what? He says they're dead. Even though they're breathing, talking, moving around. And yet the one whose body parts has been chopped up, he's laid in the ground. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says what? He's alive. In Surah Baqarah, He says, but after He says, Bal ahya, He says, وَلَكِنْ لَا تَشْعُرُونَ, but you do not perceive their life. In Surah Al Imran, He says, Bal ahya, وَلَا إِنَّ رَبِّهِمْ يُرْزَقُونَ, and they receive their sustenance. Dead people don't receive sustenance. For dead people, the sustenance has been finished. This is what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is emphasizing for those who are slain in His way, that they are alive. What about the one because of whom they were slain? Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He is the most alive. He is more alive than we can ever imagine life. So they keep insisting, oh no, he's dead. You can't ask anything from him. See, it's interesting. In the Hadith of Qudsi, which is in Sahih Bukhari, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions those who are near to Him. He says, my slaves become nearer to me through the additional actions. I'm just going to summarize the Hadith. And then He says that, they become so close to me that I become the hand with which they grab and the feet with which they walk and so forth. And then he says what? He says, and if they insist on something from me, I fulfill their insistence. This is why we go to the awliyaullah and ask them. Because we know who they're going to ask. That's the point. The end authority is Allah. Even though I'm asking the friend of Allah, I'm in reality asking Allah. These people, they get confused between Allah and Ghayrullah. They forget Ahdullah. Allah is Allah. And those who are opposed to Him are Ghayrullah. But they forget Ahlullah. Ahlullah are those whom Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has made close to Himself. And He says this in the Quran, Inna Allah ma'as sabirin. Inna Allah ma'as sadiqeen. So many other places, so many other things. It's interesting in the Quran, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about Maryam, salamullah alayha, the mother of Isa alayhi salam. When she's born, of course, her mother was expecting a son. She had made dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that if you give me a son, then I will sacrifice him in your cause. Meaning that he will be, his whole life will be spent worshiping you. And yet, she's given a daughter. And so when this daughter is born, of course, she's upset. Or rather, she's shocked. And then she's told that this daughter is better than the boys. And so she takes him to her brother, Zakaria alayhi salam. And long story short, eventually he takes her. He raises her. And he would take her to an isolated place and close her in this room so that no one would disturb her, so that she could worship Allah. And one day he forgets. He takes her there in the morning, and usually he would open her up and, bring her out in the afternoon. Take her home, and she would eat. The next day, same routine. So one day he forgets. And the next day he still doesn't remember. And the third day, and after 3 days, finally he remembers, oh, I forgot her. So he goes running to the room, sure that she has passed, that she must be dead or on the edge of death. She hasn't had anything to drink or eat in 3 days. When he opens the door, what does he see? He sees her eating fruit that's out of season. Which is interesting because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala could have sent fruit that was in season. But then people would have a doubt, or maybe someone snuck it in. So that there's no doubt that this didn't come from any place else. It's fruit that's out of season. Zakaria alayhi salam at this point is an old man. His wife is an old woman. They've been yearning for a child for decades. He's been praying for a child for decades and no response. When he sees this, now he realizes, this is when I need to pray. This is where I pray. And when he makes the dua, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives him the glad tidings of Yahya alayhi salam. Why? Because he sees the mercy of Allah descending. So this is the time when the dua will be accepted. This is why he makes the dua then. Several interesting points, and I'll just make one or two. The status of Maryam alayhi salam is not greater than the status of Zakaria alayhi salam. It's not even close. Zakaria alayhi salam is a prophet. Maryam alayhi salam is his niece. So she's the niece of a prophet. And she will eventually become the mother of a prophet. But she's not a prophet. And you cannot compare someone that's not a prophet to a prophet. The status of the prophet is always higher. By levels that we can't even comprehend. Yet Zakaria alayhi salam benefits from Maryam alayhi salam. As far as seeking help, again, this is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has created this dunya as the world of cause and effect. You have to have a means to an end. Allah is the one who gives life, yet we still eat. If you stop eating, what do your family members say? Oh, you stop eating, you're going to die. What are you going to do? You're going to die? Again, the means. Allah is the one, again, who gives life. I tell you, okay, stop breathing. What are you going to say? You want me to die? But again, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has created the means. And the greatest means is Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam himself. The hadith which Imam Ahmad bin Hanbal narrates, as well as Ibn Majah, and Imam Bukhari narrates. Imam Bukhari narrates is in Adab al-Mufrad. It's one of the books that he wrote. You know, Sahih al-Bukhari is simply one compilation of his. Sahih al-Bukhari has less than 7,000 hadiths in it. Yet we know that Imam Bukhari had memorized more than 600,000 hadiths, of which he said more than 200,000 were Sahih. So he's put those in other writings. So there's a narration that he mentions in Adab al-Mufrad, in which there is a companion of Rasulullah, Uthman bin Hunayf, radiallahu anhu, who is blind. And he comes to Rasulullah, he says, Ya Rasulullah, pray that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give me sight. And Rasulullah, he says to him, he says, look, I can pray for this for you, or you can be patient. And he says, Ya Rasulullah, make the prayer. Please pray for my sight. People don't understand why he wanted his sight. He wanted his sight to see Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He didn't want his sight for anything else other than that gaze. And Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he tells him, he says, go and make wudu. You know, make wudu very well, and then go make 2 rakat salat. And after the salat, make this dua. And he told him a specific dua to make. And in the dua is that, oh Allah, I ask you, and I turn my face to you, through the intercession of Rasulullah, through the intercession of Muhammad, the Prophet of mercy. And O Muhammad, I seek your intercession for the fulfillment of this need of mine. So Allah, accept this intercession. If you look at why this hadith was narrated, you know, because the hadiths also have why somebody narrated the hadith. You know, the incident happened. The reason this hadith was narrated because there was a man who wanted to talk to Uthman radiallahu anhu during the Khilafah of Uthman radiallahu anhu. So this is what, you know, like 20 years after Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and he couldn't get a meeting. So the companion told him, make this dua because the Rasulullah taught this dua if you need something. Again, seeking help. I'll end here today, inshallah. And I pray I didn't confuse anybody. It's not really a confusing issue, or it should not be. All authority is with Allah, period. But the ones to whom He has given authority to deny that is also kufr. And that's the simple understanding. So may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allow us to understand and give us His true love and the true love of His beloved Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, his family, his companions, and all of those whom they love. May He give victory and strength to our brothers and sisters in Gaza and Palestine and wherever the Muslims are being oppressed, and give them victory over their oppressors. Those who have not made sunnah, go and make sunnah.